A few weeks ago, I created a video all about using thought leadership as a marketing opportunity. And one of the things I talked about in that video was maybe talking about some AI stuff. The thing with AI is it's ever changing, and it's going to be hard to keep up with those kind of things to a degree anyway. But I created a deck that you could use in your own business. Feel free to use it, rebrand it, do your thing. You can pull it from the website. I'll drop the link down below in the description of the video. But the idea here is that you can use this deck, if you like, to strengthen your thought leadership content in your MSP. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of talking about kind of how to use the deck right away, and then I'll kind of give you an example of how I would use the deck if I was the one using it in a meeting, and then you can take it from there. So my name is Adam Hanneman. Welcome to Ramblings of a Geek. I've been in the MSP space for the better part of a couple decades, and I'm pretty nerdy about some stuff, and AI is one of those things I'm starting to get a little bit nerdy on because, frankly, it's kind of fun to play with. So we're talking about that today. This is a big part of, I think, what all MSPs are going to be dealing with here in the next 12 to 18 to 24 months. So let's get into it. So the first thing, when you think about any kind of webinar, any kind of presentation, those kind of things, you must understand your audience, right? Understanding your audience is really important. So this deck that we're talking about today is really about kind of AI 101 stuff, or maybe a little bit more advanced than that in a couple cases, but really it's kind of AI as a tool overall, more than agentic AI and creating agents and chatbots and all of those things that are kind of that next level step up, right? So if you're talking to a bunch of people who are already pretty AI centric and you really know what they're doing from an AI perspective, this deck or this type of content wouldn't be for them, right? So you have to understand who you're talking to before you just go ahead and shove some content out there for them. And really, when I think about thought leadership overall, thought leadership to me is really you teaching them something important and keeping the conversation around the teaching them of a thing. Not so much, and when you partner with us, blah, 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 like yes, you can do that at the end maybe, but I really want people to go, wow, that was a really good use of my 15 minutes, or really good use of my 30 minutes, or whatever that looks like, more than, boy, I feel like I was pitched at the entire time. Because when I talk to MSPs in our space, whenever they get a presentation from somebody, usually it goes in one of two camps. While they just pitch their service all the time, or really they really try to teach us something. Well, I like to live on the wow, they really tried to teach us something path more than kind of the pitch fest. So that's what this is all about today. All right, so now let's get into the presentation. Now I'm going to shift the voice in this to me talking to you as a potential MSP client, not as a MSP who wants to use this. Just as kind of how I would deliver the content if I was in your shoes. AI is everywhere. It is super ubiquitous. It's not exactly the new hotness, but certainly is a hotness right at the moment. And AI is kind of infused in all of the different things. And that's what we're talking about today. I really want to get you into a spot where you feel better about your use of AI within your business, try to kind of give you some opportunities to learn a little bit about how to use the tools, some of the different tools that are out there, and some of the gotchas, along with a few different use cases that you can take back to your business today and use for yourself. So let's go ahead and get started. When you think about all the different tools, everything.ai, right? And there's always a new tool. Every time you turn around, probably there's 5 new tools released today out on the market. The tools are everywhere, right? And the reality is some of the tools do better at certain things than others. And so one of the things I want you to think about is that when you think about all the different tools, you can really kind of put them in different contexts or different buckets of different tools that work for you, right? So things like ChatGPT and Claude and Grammarly and those kinds of things are really good for writing and content creation, right? If you're looking for graphics and image creation, you've got Canva and Adobe Firefly and Midjourney, and there's a number of other different tools there. And all the different types of things that you do in your business probably has a number of different tools. So one of the things you can do is you could say, okay, I have task X, whatever task X has to be or happens to be, especially if you're going to do it on a regular basis. Like let's figure out what tool we're going to use for that, and frankly, find the best tool for it. Sometimes you'll find a tool that works in a number of different areas too. So feel free to kind of go with that. The key here is that you want to play with some of these tools, and if you find a lot of value in any particular tool, I might suggest paying for the tool. You get more out of it, you get more features out of it, you can do more with it. But be careful, because you can spend a lot of money on a bunch of different tools if you're not using them effectively. When you think about the tools that you're looking for, you could actually ask the different AI bots to, about about the different tools you could use, right? So for example, for this presentation, I actually asked ChatGPT, Claude, and Copilot about the top AI tools that existed, and they gave me a list, and they all gave similar but different lists, right? So you could ask AI questions about the different tools. For the most part, it's going to give you some pretty good information as well. I will say that in the bottom right-hand corner, under the universal/mobile tools, those 5 tools: Google Gemini, OpenAI's ChatGPT, and the kind of the other ChatGPT kind of plugins, Siri, Copilot, Claude, they all do things kind of in a more universal format. Siri is not quite there yet, although I expect that to get a little bit better over time. I would probably have 1 or 2 kind of these universal tools that you use on a regular basis as you get more and more into AI, because it's good to kind of like understand how that tool works, at least how it responds to you for the most part. And so it's not a bad thing to kind of lean into on the universal side of the world. When it comes to AI and all of these different pieces, there is a really important thing to think about. Actually, there's a number of important things to think about when it comes to some of the risks, because there are some risks with AI. So there are some security and privacy concerns, namely, right? And that's kind of the big one. So the first thing is that you need to understand how these tools share data with third parties, right? You need to understand how they share your data with different things, right? It's an important thing to be mindful of, because you don't want to just put like private information into tools, especially free tools. And you need to understand kind of where those tools are coming from and how they're going to use your data, because they're using your data to learn a little bit. So you need to understand kind of how they use it. And one of the best ways to do is kind of read some of the privacy policies and how they operate, read reviews and some of those pieces. I think that the rule of thumb is I would not put anything in any AI tool that I would be super concerned about, especially if it was free. Tools like Copilot and some of the stuff that you pay for, when they specifically say, when you have the paid for product, we are much more cautious about your data. I feel a little bit better about those as far as putting client data in, right? So obviously Copilot and some of these other tools, may have access to some of your actual data, right? So you want to be mindful of that before you put sensitive data in there. The other thing is that depending on your industry, depending on your business, depending on your clients' businesses, you may have some compliance issues, right? So for example, if you are in the financial world, right, you're running an RIA or a stock brokerage firm or something like that where you're heavily regulated, there's probably some compliance concerns and some compliance related issues as it relates to using AI tools. Same thing with HIPAA, same thing with basically places that are regulated. So you need to understand those regulations as well, right? It's probably fine to use Grammarly to reword a sentence or a paragraph to a client, but maybe you're not going to put a bunch of your client's financial data in a thing and say, here, give me some analysis on this, unless it's compliance allowed within your industry. You also have some geographical issues, right? So you have AI tools that kind of live here, there, and everywhere. It's important for you to understand, does this AI tool live in a country or a locale that is a little bit more open or a little bit more loose on regulations, right? I'm not sure that I would use a tool that originates its data or does its data and pieces in a country that I don't necessarily trust, right? So that's an important thing to think about. And of course, you've got some accuracy and reliability issues, and this has gotten better, but it's not immune, right? So I once asked one of the AI tools to write me a script to do some IT related stuff, and it made up a command that had never existed but it seemed like it was legit, right? So, and that's very factual. That's like they just made up a thing. Well, that's been known to happen, right? You've heard of AI hallucinations in the past where they just made up data because of how the tools have been written. So it's important to sanity check and fact check some of the things, especially if it doesn't quite feel right. And the tools have gotten a little better about giving you links and some contextual stuff over time as well. So it's gotten better. You still want to sanity check it. You don't want to just assume that just because the tool says it, you can just go use it as fact necessarily. So be mindful of that as you kind of start using the tools a little bit more. The next thing is something we call shadow AI. Now, when your company decides that you're going to use 2 or 3 different tools, these are the ones that are allowed to use within the organization and the rest of them are not, or maybe these 2 or 3 are used and these 2 or 3 are not, and then kind of everything else is kind of in the middle. It's important that you as a company have some version of like acceptable use around AI and you want to make sure that you give your team some guidance, because when people use tools that maybe aren't acceptable or potentially cause some security risk, that actually makes your data, your company, your client data less secure. So that's a really important thing to think about. And the last thing is data access, right? So again, you don't want to put data in an AI tool that you don't want to potentially get further out than where you are currently, unless they have a specific use policy or specific governance around how they're going to use your tools. Microsoft Copilot is a good example that says, your data is your data, especially if you're paying for Copilot. So you want to understand what those things look like before you go ahead and dump a bunch of your client data or your own data into the tools, because it could be used in a fashion that you don't appreciate, or that's not good for you or your clients. So again, you want to make sure that you understand what the data access looks like. When it comes to getting the most out of your AI tool stack, learning how to prompt well is going to bring you a ton more value than asking kind of generic questions. So let's talk about some good practices as it relates to prompting here for a few minutes. The first thing you want to do is be very clear and specific about your prompts, right? You want to set context about what you're asking the question on. If you tell the AI that I am a small business owner that serves clients in this space, you can set the context around what that looks like. You also want to say my target clients or the target audience for whatever I'm asking for, or the thing I'm trying to do is this, right? You want to set what a good end result looks like. And then tell it a little bit about what you're looking for in a format, in the format of the post, right? So for example, if you're going to, if you're recording a YouTube video, for example, or something like that, you could say, well, I need a 2-paragraph summarization of this script. Please put it in the first person. I want no more than 500 words. You can tell it exactly what you're looking for and be specific about it. It will listen to you and it will do its best to kind of work its way into the format you've asked it for. The next thing is you want to set some boundaries, right? You can use AI to say, hey, I need a title for this email, but I want it to keep it short, keep it 8 words or less, or keep it 10 words or less, or 55 characters, or whatever that looks like. You set a boundary around what that looks like. You can also say, I want to have no more than 4 or 5 paragraphs in this essay or in this business case, use case thing I'm working on. And you can also say, I want you to avoid talking about these 2 or 3 different things, right? These are not germane to what I'm working on or what the message I want to convey. So just ignore them, pretend like they don't exist. And the tools will generally listen to you. And the cool part about AI is that you can have a bunch of different opportunities to iterate on some of these things. The other thing you can do is if you have a complex thing you want to do. For example, let's say you want to make a business case for a thing, right? Maybe you want to make a business case to use AI within your organization. You can break apart your requests and you can say, hey, I want to use AI in my business. I want to talk about this first. And then when you're done talking about that with the AI tool, you can say, I want to talk about this. And then you can break these things apart. And even, especially if you're using a tool like ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, and some of the ones that can do a little bit of remembering about what you've been talking about, especially in a conversation, you can then ask it to give you a consolidated, kind of wrap up or consolidated summary of what you've been talking about. And that will go a long way to make the output a little bit easier. The other thing you can do too is if you've asked the AI for something kind of complex and it kind of misses the mark on a couple things, you can then break it apart into different pieces, and you could say, okay, let's talk about this first. Let's solve this. Now let's talk about this. Now you can chunk it apart, and you can oftentimes get it to give you better information when you simplify the request a little bit, especially if you're asking it to do complex things. The other thing you can do is provide examples, right? So if you say, I need to make a blog post about this thing. Here is an example blog post I've written in the past so you can get a sense of my voice. Please generate a blog post for me using this as a reference about this topic and give it some more information there. It can then kind of write a little bit in your voice. Now, of course, you want to go ahead and edit it and make sure it's clear, make sure it actually is in your voice, and make sure it's not just, take it right from the AI engine, drop it on your blog, because from a Google perspective, that's not exactly a good thing for you to do. And really give it some context around kind of how you write, for example, right? Or you could say, I'm trying to say this, and you can just kind of give it a bunch of words, and maybe you ramble like I do a little bit, or you use too many words and say, can you just take this and rewrite it in a more professional or more concise manner or more friendly manner or whatever. You can give it some good context around how to use the different tones of voice. And the cool part about AI is you can tell it what it didn't do well, right? So if AI misses the mark, you say, hey, time out AI, you missed the mark on this. This is not what I was looking for. I'm really looking for this. It's not going to get offended at you. You can tell it to do things over and over and over again and refine it until you get kind of what you're looking for. You can give it better instructions, right? You can say, I like this piece of it. This was really good, but I think you missed it over here, right? And you can give it some context around what worked and what didn't work, and it will work its way to kind of get closer to what you're looking for. And you can ask AI to rewrite things over and over and over again. A human isn't going to love that so much, but the AI tool, they'll eat that for lunch, and they'll keep coming back smiling and looking to help you out even more. So don't be afraid to tell AI what did or didn't work, and ask it to redo a thing for you. And this is one of those things that you have to kind of get used to a little bit, because sometimes you think you have the thing perfectly prompted, and you have all the things, and you feel good about all of the different pieces, and it just misses the mark. And it stinks. It's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. But you can just say, hey, you know what? That didn't work. Try again, please, and just give it some more context. And the important thing is that you should play with these different tools. Like I said before, there's a bunch of them, right? There's oodles and oodles of tools, and the key here is that you play with them, you learn, you figure out what works, figure out what doesn't work. Maybe you don't try a brand new AI tool if you're on a tight deadline, right? Maybe you go to the tried and true AI tool, or tried and true just do it yourself if you're like on a tight deadline. But when you have a moment to spare here and there, it's not a bad idea to play with the tool. Or like if you're trying to do something, you're starting off a project and you're like, hey, I wonder how I should start this. Maybe just ask your favorite AI engine to say, hey, how would you do this? Or I'm looking to do a thing with this. Can you get me started, right? AI is great with brainstorming and those kinds of things too. You could say, I'm looking for some ideas around this, or I'm trying to come up with a plan that talks about whatever this thing happens to be. Can you help me out? And it'll spit you out something, right? I was trying to do a webinar around how to budget for a small business. And I was stuck looking at this blank page. I know budgeting pretty well. This is part of what I do. And I was stuck. And I said, Copilot, will you create an outline for a budget webinar for me? I want to talk about these 4 or 5 things. And it spit out an outline that was pretty good. Like, it certainly needed some efforts and some work to tweak it. But it gave me, 60% of the way. It got me 60% of the way there with probably a minute and a half worth of prompting for it. And I was then able to add my own spin on a number of different things, but it really got me past that blank page thing. So don't be afraid to ask it to do a thing for you, just because you're worried about how it's going to generate the information. The worst thing that happens is it gives you bad information, and you just say, nope, never mind, I'm going to do something different, right? So play with the tools, use them, ask the different questions, ask questions different ways, and you'll find out that the tools can really help you with your efficiency in your job. So let's talk about some use cases, because one of the challenges with AI is a little bit to what I mentioned before just a minute ago about the budgeting thing, is that sometimes you have a blank page issue, right? You open up ChatGPT or one of the other tools and you say, now what? One of the best things I found AI to do for me is to help me brainstorm. Right? AI will spit you out tons of different ideas. And so let's say you need to let's say you're making a blog post for something on your website for some kind of continual marketing that you're doing. And the topic is a topic that is whatever it happens to be, but you're having trouble coming up with a title. Well, you could say, hey, AI engine, here is my blog post, or here's what I'm talking about in my blog post. Can you help me come up with a number of different titles to help me, work your way through it, right? And you could say, hey, I'm looking for catchy titles, or I'm looking for provocative titles, or I'm looking for, technical titles. You can steer in a number of different directions, and you could say, give me 10 of them, or give me 20 of them, give me 5. Like you can be very specific around some of those pieces, and then you can say, hey, I really like these 2 or 3. Can you try again using some of these words, right? AI is really great for brainstorming, especially when it comes to high level concepts. And so think about using AI specifically for brainstorming because it really helps me in my workflow as I'm working through a number of different things. So let's say you want to start a podcast, right? And you could say, hey, I'd like to start a podcast. This is my audience. What do I need to know to how to start a podcast? What equipment do I need? What services should I use? And what else do I need to know? And it's going to give you a whole bunch of information. And you read through it and you go, okay, cool. Can you help me with the equipment? Like what should I buy from a microphone perspective? And it'll tell you a number of different pieces. And it'll give you some links, just some stuff. And you could say, okay, cool, got that. Now, what services should I use? Well, like what do I need to know about hosting a podcast? And you could ask it along the way, and you can have like a straight up conversation with the tool, and it will just it'll just answer the questions you're asking it for. And eventually you could say, okay, now help me title my podcast, right? And then help me come up with some ideas about some of the first podcast episodes. Like you can really just have a conversation, and it'll just keep answering the questions for you as you go. Now, of course, you want to sanity check the accuracy and all those other things, but like it can really help you with like coming up with kind of the top level concepts, and then you can start drilling down into the different pieces that you're looking for. One of the best things I use AI for is learning how to search, and specifically within certain tools, right? So I use Copilot for this a lot, especially because I have the paid for version of Copilot. And so when I go on PTO, or if I'm going to be away from the office for a few days, I can say, hey, help summarize my emails and my team's messages. Help me figure out which ones I need to prioritize responding to first, right? Or I can say, hey, I created this document and I don't remember when I created it, but I know I said the words, A, B, and C in it. Will you just tell me where it is? And Copilot will go off and it'll dutifully search Teams messages, it'll search Teams channels, it'll search SharePoint, it'll search your OneDrive, and it'll come back and say, hey, I think I found 2 or 3 different versions of this document. Which one would you like to take a look at? And you can go drill into it. Like it can do some of those things, especially when you have that paid for version. So using the advanced search around Copilot, or if you use a different tool that has some context around some of your own communications, you can really use it to make your life a little bit easier. For example, to use that Copilot search, and actually this is the prompt that I use, is summarize my mails, Teams messages, and channel messages for the last 2 weeks. And you can read it here on the screen, and you can grab it and use it in your own world. But basically, it prints me on a table on the screen that says, here are the Teams messages and emails you need to deal with first. And it actually gives me a little bit of a link. I can actually click on the thing, and it will bring me to all the different places. The other one is I'm looking for a document, right? I wrote a document, and in fact, this is even better because you could always search for like specific words used, but you could say, I wrote a document about this topic, and without understanding the words necessarily that you used or can't quite remember, or I know so-and-so wrote a document about this topic, and you can give it more of a broad topic, and it can search with a little bit more context, and it can help you find some stuff. It saved me from having to go looking through folders and files a number of different times over the course of the last year. So think about how you can leverage the tool for those types of queries. Now, one of the cool things that I've really started to use AI for a lot more recently is searching and to get more complex information, right? So if you're looking for a complex answer, or you're looking for something with more context, you can ask the AI tools to really dig deep into a thing, right? I saw this news article about a thing. Can you give me more information about that? And the AI tool will go find a bunch of different posts to give you some summarizations, to give you some links. Like you can then drill into it, right? Or let's say you're going to start a brand new hobby. Let's say you want to learn how to play the guitar, right? You could ask the AI, hey, I'm looking to learn how to play the guitar. What are some tools I should use? What are some other different pieces, and how could I, what are some of the best ways to learn? You could really dig into some of these different things that you're trying to do within your world, whether it's business context or not, it doesn't really matter. But you could really dig in and continually ask questions and refine the questions, and you can get pretty deep into topics just by asking smart questions. And like I said, the AI tools have gotten a lot better about giving you links. So then you can go click on the links and come back and ask it more questions about what you've seen. You can do some really cool stuff that way. The one constant with anything related to AI is it's going to evolve. It will continue to evolve. Some things will get better, some things might get a little bit worse. But the idea is that what is true today may or may not be true tomorrow. And so as you use these tools, as you get more comfortable with them, as you level up some of your business practices using these tools, know that you might be able to do some more cool stuff tomorrow that you couldn't do today. There's a whole other swath of all kinds of other AI related things, chatbots and agentic agents and like things that can like do stuff for you in the background and kind of give you more information about stuff that maybe you haven't dealt with yet, right? There's all kinds of stuff that's going to change over the course of the next few months. This whole conversation was really about how to get into AI, feel a little bit more comfortable using it, get into the tools, play with them a little bit, and be ready for whatever the next thing happens to be. And I think we're going to see consistent evolution for many, many months to come. So the more you can get comfortable or comfortable-ish or comfortable adjacent now, the better off you're going to be as we move into the future. Now, obviously, AI isn't the magic bullet that's going to solve all of the problems for things, right? And you still need humans for many, many things. So also understand what a good task for AI is and what a good task for humans still is, right? There's definitely strengths and weaknesses on both sides. So get in the tools, play with them, learn them a little bit, and get a little bit more comfortable with them over time. I think you'll actually find a fair amount of efficiency gained as you do that. Really, that's it, right? I wanted to cover a bunch of stuff, give you some context. If you want to learn more about AI, come talk to me. Now, this is where I'm going to shift back to the kind of the original video voice again. This is where the very first time you're going to talk about how to get a hold of us, right? This is where you wait until now to say, and oh, by the way, I'm going to hang out over here, or this is my email, or this is how you join my newsletter, this is how you book an appointment with me, like all of those kind of things. But get through all of the content first and say, and oh, by the way, you can find me here. That will really solidify the fact that you're not pitching to people. And that's a really important thing to consider. And when you do this well, the people that really want to like talk to you more about it are probably pretty close to ready to buy from you, or certainly want to have a meeting with you, versus trying to drop in your pitches here, there, and everywhere along the way. So this is how I might use an AI-related slide deck and AI-related content. Please feel free to grab the deck from my website. I'll give you the PowerPoint. You can go ahead and modify it, use your own templates, whatever else, if you want. So you obviously don't have to. But if you did use it, please do me a favor. Drop me a message in this video to say how you use it or how it's working for you, because I'd love to hear some of the success stories, or some things that maybe I could do better, or kind of work on some of the things. I like making this kind of content. So if I can help you in your business and help make some content that you might be able to reuse someplace else, cool, I'm happy to do it. So thanks for coming on this ramble with me, and I hope to see you on the next one.